Part 2. In this part, we're going to talk about the problem that our species collectively faces. George Orwell said that if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. And that may be exactly what I'll be getting into in this section. Things that are uncomfortable for us to hear. Philosopher Vernon Howard said that human sickness is so severe that few can bear to look at it, but those who do will become well. Soren Kierkegaard said, there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to accept what is true. And it all really boils down to that right there. We suffer because we either believe in concepts and ideologies that simply aren't true and do not serve us, or we refuse to believe in that which is true, and therefore we suffer. Those are the two main reasons why all people suffer. The questions for this entire section of Part 2 are the following. What is the nature of this problem that we collectively face? Who or what is creating this problem? How is this problem manifested in the world? Is there an underlying agenda? And if so, what is it? So we'll be taking these in order, and I'll be spending the majority of the time in this section talking about how the problem is manifested, the actual methodologies that are used against us, and talk about what the problem is first. So this is, in one sentence, the main problem that humanity collectively faces. A small cabal of evil sorcerers control our whole planet by manipulating the consciousness of its people into a vibration of fear. We talked about what sorcery and magic were in Part 1. Sorcerers use illusion and manipulation against people to try to create opposition within the self and opposition in the world and chaos. So there's a group of these people who understand how consciousness works, and they're using that knowledge against the bulk of humanity to control their consciousness by controlling the mind, and they're manipulating their consciousness into a vibrational energy of fear. With that, only chaos and evil can be created outwardly into the world. So that's the root problem that we all face. That's what's actually occurring here. That's what we're falling victim to. Many have seen this image, the pyramid of manipulation, the hierarchical and compartmentalized structure through which those in the know, those who have the knowledge of how human consciousness works and are using it as a weapon against the masses, how they run this top-down pyramid scheme. Up here you see the top of the pyramid, the pinnacle, the summit, where the knowledge is at. Those in the know, those with the knowledge, those who are illuminated into this knowledge of consciousness, can be seen at being at the summit or at the top of a pyramid, and then all different aspects of society are controlled from the top down through a hierarchical, regimented, compartmentalized system. Those who are down here have very little knowledge of how things really work and how they're really structured. They just go along to get along. They do their job. They don't really consider the wider implications of what they're involved in or what they do. And yet, they're being used as pawns in a game, in a manipulation game, to actually create more and more compartmentalized and centralized control of everything and everyone. And you could look at this as simply a structure of knowledge. Knowledge is concentrated at higher and higher levels as you get closer to the top of this pyramid, and there is very little knowledge about how things really work down here. These are just puppets whose strings are being pulled to accomplish the goals and the agenda of those at higher levels of knowledge. These sorcerers of consciousness, as I'll call them, are occult practitioners. They use the knowledge and methodologies of occultism to accomplish their agenda. Now, the word occult is very misunderstood. I want to make it very clear that I am not speaking out against or condemning all types of occultism. Occultism is a body of knowledge that is not generally understood or known about. It is simply knowledge. It's a tool to be used by the practitioner. And what we need to understand is just because it's occult does not mean that it is evil. It is simply information about how consciousness works, about how we work. And it is known by some and not known by others. So as a tool, you could look at it like any other tool. For example, a hammer. You would not consider a hammer as good or evil. A hammer simply is a hammer. It is a tool. It is what the wielder of the tool does with it that makes it good or evil, that makes it being used for good or evil. So I could take a hammer and I could go out onto the street and strike the first person, bystander, on the street that I see and kill them, which would be a completely sadistic, evil act. That doesn't make the hammer evil. That makes my intent for wielding the hammer evil. I could take that same hammer and go and use it to build a shelter for a homeless individual, and I would have put an act of goodness forward into the world. So it isn't the tool itself, that's good or evil. It's the consciousness of the individual that is wielding the tool. And that's what the occult is. It is simply a tool. It is a body of knowledge. And when we get into the word, you look at the word occult, it comes from the same root as the word ocular, meaning related to the eye or related to vision. And that is exactly what the word occult means. The word occult simply means hidden. That which is hidden from sight, hidden from everyday availability or sight. We cannot perceive it because it is cloaked, it is veiled. That is what occult is. All occultism simply means hidden knowledge. Researcher Judith Moriarty made this statement: the greatest conspiracies are not actually hidden. They are just fragmented into different pieces like a puzzle right before our eyes. So this conspiracy that I'll be talking about, this global hegemony of control, this global manipulation scheme, is right in our face and we can't see it, most of us. It is just beyond the limits of ordinary perception because it is occult knowledge that most people have very little, if any, awareness of. So it's fragmented into different pieces, but it's right in front of us in plain sight, hidden in plain sight, so to speak. Woodrow Wilson described this manipulation. He said that we have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the world. No longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by the conviction and vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of small groups of dominant men. And you would think that an individual like this would understand how the government had come to be structured. This section I'm just going to lay out. I'm not going to go into great detail about how all of these groups are interconnected and related and their histories, because that information is there to be gleaned from a number of researchers who have done intricate, detailed work, made a life's work of understanding these groups and their connections. I'm simply going to lay out an overarching idea of who the hidden occult controllers of this planet are, and give you a general idea of the types of organizations that they work through. So any organization that is globalist in nature, that is working toward a world government, toward greater centralization of power, think tanks that are interconnected and working toward common worldwide goals and worldwide laws. I simply refer to these organizations as globalists because that's what, in fact, they are. Organizations like the United Nations, the G8, G10 family of nations. You have the roundtable think tanks, such as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Club of Rome, and many others. And the bottom right there you see a collage of different members of an organization known as the Project for the New American Century. These are globalist think tank organizations that are working toward greater power in fewer hands. That's the main thing to keep in mind. Centralization of power and organizations working toward that aim. World politicians are simply puppets for these greater organizations that are trying to centralize power more and more. If they're on a scene level, they are probably not very high up in the hierarchy. They are controlled, and they are simply performing their tasks as they are laid out by their masters, by those who really are pulling the strings behind the scenes. But world leaders that are in senior positions of governments are certainly involved in this process of global manipulation. Military leaders, strategists, planners at high levels, very involved in this manipulation. Much higher up in this hierarchy and organizational structure are globalist bankers, such as the Rothschild banking dynasty, the Rockefellers, and many other financial institutions that are really calling the shots behind what we see playing out at governmental levels throughout the world. Royal family members of all nations, the royalty of England, Spain, the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries. So royalty is not simply figurehead. It is involved in these organizations. It does direct the agendas of these organizations, and it does have intricate interconnections with the banking dynasties that are really calling the shots behind what we see playing out at the scene level within governmental structure. Religious and New Age ideology leaders certainly play a role in this to cover the spiritual aspect of the deception. Media moguls that control the information that we are presented with. And again, it's not my intent here to go through all of the interconnectedness between these organizations, nor to present a all-encompassing tapestry of how they work. It's simply to give you an overview that this is the body of individuals, and these are the organizations that they work through. The research is out there and has been compiled by many researchers, and you could look into that for lifetimes if you so chose. Theodore Roosevelt made this statement: behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. Former president making this statement. You would think, again, that someone like this has some knowledge of how things are really structured in the power centers of the world. And he's telling you right there, out in the open, that there is an invisible government that owes no allegiance to the people. Now, The body of knowledge that these sorcerers have available to them, where it is derived from, is what many researchers have called the mystery traditions. The mystery traditions of consciousness. Again, it is not to say that this body of knowledge in and of itself is evil. The sorcerers that are doing this work of manipulation, this great work to hypnotize and enslave humanity, they are the inheritors and the perverters of this body of knowledge. It is not theirs, it does not belong to them. They happen to come into contact with it through their, perhaps, bloodlines, their involvements, okay? And they are taking this awareness, this knowledge of how the human consciousness works and how it can be influenced, and they're using it for their own ego-identified worldview and benefit. So they're the inheritors of this knowledge, and they're the perverters of this knowledge. They're using it in a perverted, irresponsible fashion to serve their own egoic will. And this is the ancient secret society networks all throughout the world that have their roots back as far as ancient Egypt and Babylon and even farther back. They had this body of knowledge. They continue in many ways to preserve this body of knowledge. Some of them for a positive purpose, some for a negative purpose. So it isn't any one given secret society that's orchestrating and controlling it all. There are very responsible and good-hearted individuals in these groups, and there are very dark-hearted, manipulating individuals in these groups. It is simply that the body of knowledge about human consciousness, it's called the mystery traditions because it dates so far into human antiquity, we don't really know when it was codified and came into its existence as we understand it. But it is the knowledge of how human beings operate. You know, our physiology, our emotional makeup, our psychology, etc. How the human psyche works. And that is who is really controlling the whole game from behind the scenes, are the people who have this information, have had it for thousands of years, and are using it in a completely perverted way to manipulate people for their own egoic benefit. So that's clear. That's crucial to keep in mind, and to keep it clear that, again, it is not the knowledge of the mystery traditions or the mystery traditions themselves that is evil. It is how imbalanced consciousnesses are using that knowledge to control people. So this is one of the structures of secret societies. In this case, it happens to be Freemasonry. You see that it is a compartmentalized, pyramidal structure. Okay? It's hierarchical. So it's a top-down scheme. Higher levels of knowledge in fewer people's hands as you get closer to the top, and then as you get down near the bottom, there's many more people that comprise that group, but they're less in the know than those smaller groups at higher levels. So it's simply a process of compartmentalization and the hierarchical structure of knowledge. So you want to get to this level, you have to play the game to get up to this level, and then you're initiated into that knowledge. And it is my contention that this is the entire reason that this knowledge has been perverted in the way that it has. This is not a democratization of knowledge. This is elitism when it comes to knowledge. This isn't giving knowledge out to everyone freely, regardless of who wishes to have it. The total distribution, the egalitarian distribution of knowledge would have assured that this knowledge never became as perverted as it has become. But instead, because there is this hierarchical and compartmentalized structure within the networks that do have the knowledge of the mystery traditions, this is the reason that we have seen such irresponsible use of that knowledge. Researcher Phil Rockstrode described this process this way, and I think it's a great statement, the authoritarianism inherent to this structure, he's talking about the compartmentalized hierarchical structure, the pyramid structure of secret society networks. This authoritarianism inherent to this structure is antithetical to the concept of the rights and liberties of the individual. Most individuals bound by secrecy-prone hierarchical values will, over time, lose the ability to display free thinking, engage in civic discourse, and even be able to envisage the notion of freedom. That's what it is really all about. See, you put people into this idea that there is always someone beneath you and always someone above you, and the idea of freedom slowly goes out the door with that regimented, compartmentalized, and hierarchical worldview. And that is why, very much like this pyramid of manipulation diagram, secret societies have also fallen into that way of looking at the world, and power being concentrated into fewer and fewer hands, and that knowledge being used ultimately in an irresponsible way by those who have it. So I'm going to talk about two groups of people. I'm going to talk about the people at the bottom of this pyramid and the people at the top, but not so much those at the top. There's a level even above the top of that pyramid, which I'll briefly talk about. But I want to talk about the people at the bottom of this pyramid, those who really aren't in the know, those who really are suppressed by this manipulation that's at work. And the group that I perceive as being the most suppressed, the most damaged by this level of manipulation that is taking place. You would think it's just your average citizen, your average person, but it really isn't. There is a group that is even more manipulated, that is even more held in deep levels of unconsciousness and fear, and in being cut off from their true divine nature, being cut off from the ever-present and ever-flowing dynamic energy of consciousness and love. And these are the people who I would consider at the very, very bottom of this pyramid with the most weight pressing upon them. And it is the controllers of the world, the military and the police. These are the people who are the most victimized by this hierarchical structure of manipulation. Sadly, they're often the people who understand how this dynamic is at work in the world more than anybody else. They don't understand it more so than anyone else because their consciousness is in that shutdown of a mode. And because they're so ruled by the reptilian complex of the brain that they're in that fear vibration, they're in that confusion vibration, and they're just being given orders, they're just following orders to go out and control things in the external world because they've bought the big lie, and they've bought the lie that says that control is the answer, that you can create order from control. And we've already looked at that in part one. It's like trying to dry wet clothes by pouring more water on them, or trying to put out a fire by pouring more gasoline on it. You will never create the opposite polarity by adding the same polarity to the situation. So you can never create order by adding fear, confusion, and control to the mix. You can only create order by adding the love dynamic, love, dominion, or non-duality, and freedom is how order is created. I can't emphasize that enough. These are the people that are actually the most damaged by this system and the most manipulated. They actually have the brunt of the weight of the system upon them more than anyone else. And as such, they need the greatest amount of help and the greatest amount of emotional support and understanding in getting to a higher level of consciousness, which will be exceedingly difficult for these individuals, particularly if they do not wish to come out of their worldview, their negative worldview that is based on separation and control, and they have great attachment to being right, to that the world is the way they currently think that it is, even though it bears very little resemblance to reality in any way. It's quite unfortunate. So they actually need our help more than anybody else. Now, back to the top of the pyramid. Those who are really in the know, really calling the shots. Is there something even higher than that? And I'm really here today to tell you that, yes, there is. And I'm kind of uninterested in what really controls the game from even higher than the top level of the pyramid, because in either event, it's the same way that they accomplish it, and it will be undone in the same way through a rising of awareness and consciousness. I'm here to tell you that the highest level of this pyramid is not the summit. There's always a hidden chamber built into any great pyramid. And the hidden chamber is where the shots of the game are really called from. Okay? And it is now known that there is one sorcerer that sits in the middle chamber, in the hidden chamber of this pyramid of manipulation, and this one sorcerer alone calls the entire shots of the entire game. They're holding all the keys to all the locks on all the doors. And there's a device now that you can look into, and you can discover who that one hidden manipulator, hidden sorcerer, hidden prison warden, if you will, is. And there's only one. And the device that has been built that enables one to look into it and find out who that hidden controller really is right here. It's a common, everyday mirror, because that is who controls the entire game. The individual, the person that stares back from that looking glass, is who has all the keys to all the locks on all the doors, and it's all about what is going on within. That's what's really controlling the game. Every individual is their own prison warder. See, we ultimately create our own manipulation, our own enslavement, our own domination. So it is up to us to individually raise our consciousness, our understanding of what is taking place, to break out of that prison, break out of that shell of shut down consciousness, to understand what's really going on here. And of course, if we look at the levels of consciousness as they manifest in the physical world, we understand that there's one way that manipulators, people who are attempting to manipulate consciousness so that they come out on top and other people suffer as a result, they have to attack really one aspect of the individual. And it's ultimately all about mind control. Because if we look at this structure, spirit, mind, and body, this level is the physical world level. Above that, linked with it, is the mind. And above that is spirit, is all-encompassing pure being, pure consciousness. If you're going to have a true connection in your physical manifestation to the spirit, that connection is this layer, the mind layer. Okay? So if the mind is in good health, if the mind is in balance, if the mind is not under manipulation and control, there will be a powerful connection between body and spirit. If it is not in good state, if it is in disarray, if you do not understand the nature of the mind and the nature of your own psyche and psychological makeup, then it is very easy to sever this connection between body and spirit once the mind is under control, externally controlled. So you look at it this way. The body could be seen as the male principle, the blade, or the yang energy. Conversely, the spirit is the opposite aspect, the opposite essence. It is that which is not physical. It's the yin, or the feminine aspect. See, the body rises up to meet the spirit, and the spirit descends to meet the body. So they meet at this realm. This is where body and spirit meet, and they mingle in the realm of mind. So the blade and the chalice combined could be seen to represent mind, and it's a symbol that we've all seen. It's the Star of David, or the Seal of Solomon, as it has been called. It's the seal of body and spirit coming together at the layer of mind. And it is the solar energy combined with the lunar energy to create Sol and Mon, sun and moon, the Seal of Solomon. So keep in mind, that is the whole dynamic that sorcerers are after. They want to control this level. So this level would be very difficult to control physically. You would need a lot of physical force to get it done. You control this level, people will police themselves. They will mind control themselves, essentially, through public opinion and through indoctrination down to generation upon generation. The control that they're after is in this level, and if they control the mind, they de-link the body from the spirit. And that's the whole game that they're after. That's the whole thing that they want to perpetrate. Mind control. So this whole next section of the presentation is going to be about methodologies of mind control, consciousness control, how to control what you think, how you feel, and how you act. Okay, the methods of manipulation that are employed against us, members of the human species, by people who have this occultic knowledge and use it for their own egoic benefit. I call this the methods of manipulation, and as many researchers have called it, particularly Michael Tessarian has termed this the war on you, because it's the only real war that's being waged out there. There isn't a war on poverty, there isn't a war on homelessness, there isn't a war on ignorance, there isn't really a war on terrorism. There is only a war on you and your consciousness. That's what the real war that's being waged on earth is really being waged upon. It's the war on your consciousness, on your mind. So we're going to look at the methods of manipulation. And they're very varied in their attack pattern. They're very, it's multi-tiered. Okay? It's very spread out and throughout all different areas of life, these methods of manipulation. So it's a multi-tiered attack on our consciousness. And I've chosen 14 of what I consider the most prominent methods of manipulation to go through in the presentation. And I've chosen 14 as a symbolic number, which we'll get into later and you'll understand why. But here's what the methods of manipulation are that are used against us. Obfuscation, worldview poisoning, the exploitation of primal fears, the divide and conquer technique, indoctrination through what we call the education system, controlled opposition, the financial system, the monetary system, the control of mass media and information, food and medicine, in quotes, the illusion of time, the denial, hassle, ridicule factor, what I coined the DHR factor, religion, specifically religion as binding, which we will get into, the use of symbolism in a mentally subversive way, in a mentally subversive fashion, and what I call chaos sorcery, what other researchers have called the problem, reaction, solution method, or the Hegelian dialectic. So I'll be taking the first 11 of them up to the DHR factor. It will be a small analysis of each one. But then for the last three, religion, symbolism, and chaos sorcery, I consider those the real heavy guns of the war, so to speak. They're the real weapons, the big three of the weapons, and I'll be taking those at length. I'll be going through those specifically. So that will take up the bulk of part 2. So I'll begin with obfuscation. This is the first method of manipulation that the mind control sorcerers use against the human population. So obfuscation kind of looks like this. You see an elaborate, ornate mask here. If you saw that coming at you, you might not be so worried about it. It seems like an ornamental style. This is how something has to be packaged to us. It has to look ornate. It has to look pretty. It has to be packaged and presented to us in a nice way. But if we really saw what lays underneath, if we really saw what was truly coming at us, which is this, we would want to go in the opposite direction. So see, it always has to wear a mask. It has to be sold to us as something other than what it really is, so that people think it's something else. That's what obfuscation really is. And I'm going to just briefly go over what are the things that are obfuscated. How do they use obfuscation to control us mentally? Well, the sorcerers want to obfuscate simplicity with complexity. In fact, everything that I'll talk about in this presentation is quite simple, taken in and of itself. The tapestry may be ornate and may be a lot of information to take in, but each individual component is simple, and that is because the truth is always simple. It's always easy to understand truth. Truth never comes at us with great levels of complexity. It's always something simple and elegant, just like we find in nature. So if a controller can get you to think that discovering the truth is way too complex for you to ever look into it, they'll push you off the path because you'll say, I'm not even going to bother. It's too complex. I wouldn't possibly be able to understand it, so I'm not even going to bother to try. Okay, so that's obfuscation of simplicity with complexity. Controllers obfuscate principles with laws. Principles are based in conscience of doing the right thing because one has consciously recognized it as the right thing. Law is that which strives to create obedience based on a dynamic of fear of punishment. You're codifying something and saying you must conform to this, you must comply to this, not because you have recognized it as such, as being true and as being the right thing to do, but because in fact you will be punished by someone if you do not conform to this or comply to it. And that modality of consciousness is based in fear. Law is based ultimately in fear consciousness, whereas principles are based in the recognition of truth and having conscience be born within an individual. And as such, that consciousness is based in love, embodied in a man like Gandhi, a man of principle. So the next thing that they obfuscate is dominion with fear of punishment. So this is a person who rules the kingdom of the self. They've activated the energy within them. They have united the male and female polarities, the yin and the yang, and they have raised their consciousness to a vibration of the solar mind, to the love energy dwelling within them. And they don't take actions because they fear the punishment if they don't do or do not take a certain action. They take an action because they themselves understand and have recognized that that action exists in harmony with natural law, with the natural order of the universe, with the truth. It resonates in truth. And that individual has made that recognition according to their own will and their own consciousness, not because they fear punishment. Taking that Taking an action or not taking an action because you fear punishment is the lowest level of consciousness that you can take or not take any action. You're taking it out of a vibratory energy of fear as opposed to a level of understanding that is born in love and conscience and consciousness. So you cannot take an action based on fear of punishment and expect there to be order and peace and good things in the world. We have to make these recognitions through the raising of our own awareness that they resonate with truth and take action according to those principles. The next thing that they obfuscate is gnosis with belief. See, gnosis can be defined as an understanding that is born through direct experience of a thing. So gnosis means you don't believe that it exists. You know that it does because you have a direct experience of that thing. So you could put your hand in a pot of water and it's hot, and then you have gnosis that it's hot because you actually placed your hand in the pot and you know that it is hot. Someone else, if you said, okay, that's hot, they may believe you, they may have a belief about that, they don't really have gnosis of it until they directly access it or directly experience it. So that's what gnosis is. Gnosis is knowledge born of direct experience. Belief, which is what religions want you to have. They want you to simply believe something because it is told to you by someone that came before you, will put you into a modality of consciousness where you're not really thinking your own thoughts. You haven't really thought through why it is you may hold a particular belief or value. It is just something that you have acquired from someone else's understanding of the world. And that's why I say throughout this presentation, no one should believe anything that I'm saying throughout this whole presentation. It should resonate with you as truth because you looked into these things on your own and determined they are true or not true. And then live your life in harmony and in according to your understanding of that. Not because you believe what I'm saying. I'm not asking for anyone's belief. If I was asking for anyone's belief, I would be no better than any other religious leader. So I'm looking to inspire gnosis within a person. That you look into things on your own and come to your conclusions about them because you yourself have studied and considered them and know how they work. Individuality is obfuscated with culture. And this is a big one because all the value within us is carried in the individual. The individual is of ultimate value. And again, an individual is unique, a unique expression of consciousness. And culture, as the late Terence McKenna, one of my greatest mentors and teachers, said, culture is not your friend, folks. He was very fond of saying, you know, it's that which controls you. It's a cult, so to speak. So culture is trying to make everyone conform to its value system and its ideology about what is true and what is right. And oftentimes that's not really in harmony with the truth, with natural law, with how things really operate in the world. It's simply that way because people who came before us made it that way. And we're just going along with it. We don't know whether it's actually right or getting anything really of great value and something that can lead to our actual fulfillment out of it. We're just going along with it because others before us did it, and we're expected to take up that mantle and do the same thing in culture. So it's a self-perpetuating, institutionalized belief system. It's an institutional paradigm, a way of looking at the world. And that's what they try to tell you your individual identity is. It's a member of culture. Well, that isn't what your individual identity is. The true identity of the self is pure consciousness experiencing itself in a multitude of forms, and that's where the greatest value lies, within the individual, not within a culture. They obfuscate openly truth with lies. This is very simple. They'll just tell you black is white, white is black, and it's this way because we said so, because we're the arbiters of truth, and we will tell you what is right and what is wrong. We'll make it up as we go along, depending on our objectives and our aims and our goals. So the truth is what we say it is. It's not something that's out there. It's just all relative, moral relativism again. The truth is what I say it is because that's what's good for me. Well, that isn't really what truth is. Truth is actually independent of the individual, and we need to use our perceptions to get into harmony with it. The truth actually exists independent of what we think or feel about it. So that's another method of obfuscation, and this is how moral relativism works. Obfuscate the truth with lies. Obfuscate good with evil. Get everybody believing that they can they'll continue to do things that really aren't good for them, but they'll end up getting something good out of it. This is the hamster in wheels syndrome. I'll keep doing this and getting one result, but expect to get another result, which I can never get by doing this, but I'll continue to run around in the wheel anyway. See, they want you to believe that you can get that which is good by really doing things that are harmful ultimately, and are not in harmony with nature, in harmony with natural law, in harmony with the truth. So people are really living this here. They're living that which is going to get them that, and they think it's going to get them this. And it'll never work that way. And that's what attachment is all about. Attachment to doing things one way, thinking a certain way, and you expect that somehow magically, even though it's never gotten you what you want, it's going to suddenly get you what you want one day. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. The next method of manipulation is worldview poisoning, as we talked about a bit in part 1. Worldview poisoning is through constant application of repeating certain phrases, repeating certain concepts, and putting ideas into people's minds, you get people to look at human nature in a certain way, as damaged, as fundamentally flawed. Even upon coming into the world, we're born in an evil state, we're born in a damaged state, in an impure state. And that isn't really what human nature is. We have to see this for what it is, a method of worldview poisoning. We don't come in evil, we are conditioned through those who have come before us and through the bad information that we take in and accept as truth. That's how we become flawed in our ways of looking at the world and of being in the world. This is what human nature really looks like. It is fundamentally good. It is fundamentally nurturing and protecting, and wants to help raise ourselves and other beings to higher levels of awareness. Another way that the worldview is attacked is by getting people to identify their value with a number or a group of possessions. So this has to do with how we view mentally our value as an individual. Do we look at ourselves as how much money we make, how much money we have in the bank, what kind of car we drive, what kind of clothes we wear, what kind of house we live in, Or do we recognize that no value can be placed upon the individual because the individual is of infinite value? And the individual is an expression of infinite consciousness having an experience in the physical world. And if we look at that as our value, then we can't be brainwashed, we can't be mind controlled, because we'll recognize the spiritual nature of ourselves in others that we're around. In other words, that which is divine in me recognizes that which is divine in you, as encapsulated in the phrase namaste, or by the Mayan in la catch. I am another you, you are another me, because this is our true value. The controllers want people to think, to mentally believe that there is no such thing as change, that there is a static state. It has always been this way, it is this way now, and it will always be this way, and this is simply untrue. This is another method of worldview poisoning, another methodology to control consciousness. I'll often say to people, so much change is occurring, it's almost impossible to keep up with it. And people often respond, nothing's ever going to change. It's always going to be this way. They're a victim of this worldview poisoning that it is impossible to create change, because they think that change has to be something that happens instantly on a global level. It doesn't work that way. The global change is happening slowly by individuals changing themselves, their own consciousness. We have to change and become the butterfly, and that's how change happens on a global scale. Okay? So change is possible. Thousands of people alive today are evidence of this, and it can be done. It often happens in small steps, and it happens by each individual being the change, changing themselves. The next method of manipulation is preying upon our primal subconscious fears that go back to human antiquity. And here's what they are. Our primal fears are fourfold. The fears that are the deepest rooted in the subconscious mind are the fears of darkness, the fears of predators, the fear of abandonment, and the fear of chaos. So the controllers know this, the sorcerers know this, those who are using mind control understand that we are motivated to avoid these fears. So they use them against us all the time. And here's how it works. See, the sun is the greatest friend of mankind. There would be no life without the sun on this planet. Could never exist without the sun. Sun provides energy, light, heat, warmth, food, okay, for plants to grow and other animals to live. So there is no life without the sun. The ancients understood this quite readily, and that is why the sun is revered and worshipped in many ancient religions and cultures. Winter is a time of the sun not being present, so along with that you get the cold, you get die off of plants, you get the scarcity of food, you get animals coming in and encroaching territory, and things becoming a more dangerous place. So you're looking to the father figure, the strong male dominant father figure, for protection of those that aren't as strong and are as physically able to control the surroundings. So when the sun is going down and not present, or is absent for a long time, as in winter, the main source of protection is the male dominant father figure of the tribe or the culture, because he is the one that will protect the tribe, protect the family from these guys, the predators. That ties in with the other primal fear. So you have the fear of darkness tied in with the fear of predators. And if the father figure abandons his people that he is protecting, then they are exposed to the influence of predators. So there is where the fear of abandonment ties in to this story about how these subconscious fears have been working on us since the dawn of mankind, since human antiquities. And when we get into that situation where there may be predators around us, the first thing we're going to cry out for is do something about it. This can't continue to go on. We need to be protected by the big daddy figure, the male dominator father figure, which in our culture has become the governments of the world. Those who we look to for protection, and we are dependent upon, we have become dependent upon, because they have been propped up as the male father figure of our culture to protect us against any threats. When in fact, the joke is really on us. Because a predator, if you break the word down, is simply a predator, one who has come before another. And again, this ties in with the ancient mystery traditions, the ancient secret societies that had the information of consciousness, and these are the people who are ultimately in control now, who are calling the shots from behind the scenes, and they are predators to our level of awareness. They've had this knowledge for thousands of years. They know we don't have it. For them, it's almost as simple as shooting fish in a barrel, because they have all this knowledge about how we work. We have very little knowledge about how we work, and many don't even desire to have it. That's one of the main problems. And they have become the predators, our predators. They're telling us that they're going to prop themselves up as our protectors, but in fact, because of the levels of knowledge they have and how they're using it against us, they're actually our predators, our predators. The next method of manipulation is the technique known as divide and conquer. So I have here an image of Caesar, who used this in the Roman Empire to conquer lands that he absorbed into the Roman Empire. For example, when Caesar was attempting to conquer Gaul, he would have sub-regiments of his army attack certain towns in the region Gaul, which we now call France, to create conflicts between neighboring tribes. He would blame it on, have them blame it on another tribe, and then he would watch the chaos ensue and watch them fight amongst each other. While he was sitting back, his armies had lots of rations, lots of supplies, were well rested. When all the fighting was done and their forces were weakened, he would send his legions in and annihilate the enemy with minimal losses. The divide and conquer strategy. Get people fighting amongst themselves so they do not have any reserves or strength for fighting the real enemy that's keeping them all down. And they divide us on whatever principles they can, whatever ways we can possibly see ourselves as separate. They use the divide and conquer through sex, male and female, through race, any differences in race, region of the world, ethnicity, through age, young and old, through religion. I'm Christian, I'm Islamic, I'm Jewish. Through class, the rich and the poor. Through politics, Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus labor. You look at nationality, the United States versus Mexico, Canada versus the United States, France versus England. You know, any ways that you can get people to see themselves as separate, you're reinforcing this method of manipulation and mind control, because people are easier to control and dominate if they are warring amongst each other. The indoctrination system that we laughingly call education in the Western culture. Western education has become almost entirely left brain. We talked about what the imbalance in the brain does to the brain chemistry and the brain physiology. Our culture is actually a system of indoctrination toward the left brain. Reading, writing, and math. Science. The absence, largely, most programs that get cut from school are artistic, creative programs, music, things like that. We need a whole-brained education that encapsulates and that encompasses both left and right brain for a holistic approach to balancing both brain hemispheres and having them come together in coherence. And unfortunately, that isn't what we have. We have outcome-based systems of education that are really there to dumb people down, to keep them in a half-brain state of consciousness, to teach them only 5 sense identification, and to prepare them for roles, for ego-identified roles that we call jobs, that are basically preparing people to be. This education system is designed to prepare people to be conforming, obedient workers. That is what they're trying to pump out through the scientifically crafted form of indoctrination in the West that we call education. And what I'll be talking about later is occultic symbology that is used throughout our culture. One of them is the square graduation hat, the board that is worn on top of the crown chakra. This is a highly subversive symbol because the square has always represented base consciousness. The square, in particularly Freemasonic symbology, represents base consciousness or the checkered life of mankind. Those who are wanderers between light and darkness, never really knowing which is which. So they lead the life of a pawn. And it's particularly subversive because it's a black square that represents darkness, ignorance, strife, conflict. The black square, a highly subversive symbol, and they're placing it upon graduation, upon the crown chakra, the place where the energy of consciousness is strongest in the physiology. And a highly subversive symbol representing that one has become gradually indoctrinated. They have graduated to the consciousness of the square. It's absolutely amazing that a symbol like this can be put right before people, and they think of it as something that is positive and revel in it. Yet it is actually a very subversive usage of symbolism upon the consciousness. The next method of manipulation is controlled opposition. So this is the illusion of two opposing forces fighting each other when in fact they're actually the same force. It's a flip side of the same coin. Best example of this is Democrat versus Republican. There is no difference between the two. There is only really one political party doing the agenda of the manipulators behind the scenes, the international banking dynasties and the occultic controllers that call the shots. This is a great political cartoon here. The two-party illusion is the first aspect of this controlled opposition. Again, no difference between Republican and Democrat. They're two wings of the same bird. Vote all you want. The flight plan does not change. The body, they're both connected to the same body and they're flying to the same place. And if you need any clearer example of this, look to the 2004 election scam, the election fraud between John Kerry and George Bush, because they're both members of the elite order of the Skull and Bones, Yale fraternal order, based on a dark sect of Freemasonry, what I would call a rogue lodge, and it is the order of death. It is that which worships the force that brings chaos, because they are the chaos magicians. They are the chaos sorcerers. They are bred to be these left brain dominant controllers and manipulators that use occultic ideologies against people to manipulate them. And these two men are both orders of members of the same fraternal brotherhood of Yale University, the Skull and Bones. A bit about the symbology of the skull and the bones. The skull is where thought takes place. The bones, the crossbones, are what we use to perform action. But you'll notice that there is a lost mode of consciousness here. There is thought and action, but no emotion. The sacred feminine is removed from the equation because the sorcerers of consciousness are those who use their intelligence and their will to act, but have no emotion. So they are the skull and the bones. They don't care about the consequences of their actions in the external world and what their actions do to others. They're only using their egoic will, the bones, and their cleverness, the left brain consciousness, the left brain aspect of human thought with no connection to the wisdom or the nurturing or the intuition of the right brain to do whatever they want to do their egoic will. The flip side of this controlled opposition is the New Age movement. And this may somewhat upset some people who are into New Age ideologies. I don't think all New Age movement ideologies are bad or negative or shouldn't be looked into. I certainly think they should be looked into. I think meditating in the proper context is a great form of experiencing pure awareness. However, I think that the New Age movement is largely co-opted, and it is being used as something to get people never to look at the negative. To say don't look at that. That's negative. You're being negative by saying that people are being manipulated. Speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil. And that ideology isn't going to get you anywhere. That's not going to get you closer to the understanding of why things are the way they are. That's an ostrich with his head in the sand syndrome, as far as I'm concerned. So the New Age movement can imbalance people toward the right brain if they're not careful, and they keep going into these ideologies that says there's no such thing as anything negative. Don't look into any of the negative. It really isn't going to get us anywhere in understanding why things are the way that they are and how they got that way. We need to confront the negative, not be totally absorbed by it or to completely get lost in it, but we need to look into it, confront the dark recesses of the psyche and the origins of the human ego and the human attachment to the physical world, to understand why evil has come into manifestation to the extent that it has in our world. If we're really going to solve these problems, we have to go into those levels of the deep, dark recesses of the subconscious and confront the shadow there where it lives, if we're going to come out of it and be reborn in wisdom and understanding. So that is controlled opposition. The next method of manipulation is one of the biggest, and it's one of the hardest to transcend and rise above because of how ingrained the belief in the financial system is in our world. So the financial system is basically a system of enslavement, and it is based on the principles of fiat currency and debt, which we will talk about. One of the originators of the Rothschild banking dynasty, Meyer Rothschild, made this statement: "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." Because he knew that all you really had to do to take control of the direction of a nation is to control how its monetary system works and control the way that the money is printed, the interest rates, to charge interest on it, and to control the amount of money in circulation. And what we have in effect today as our monetary system is a system of fiat currency. Fiat is a Latin word which means so be it, let it be. And this is exactly what our monetary system is. Money is printed at the whim of money printers. They simply say, let it be. The Federal Reserve System, a conglomeration of corporate, privately owned banks that has nothing to do with our system of government. It is wholly privately owned and operated, and it essentially controls our government, our lawmaking body, and our lawmaking decisions in Congress. And this fiat currency system is actually a system of printing money at the whim of the money masters in order to create one thing, and that is debt. Our money system is essentially nothing but debt, because every dollar that is printed carries debt with it. The amount of money in circulation never equals the amount of debt that is owed. So it is a self-perpetuating system of debt that can never be paid off. It just grows larger and larger and larger. Thomas Jefferson warned against this type of a monetary system. He said that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers occupied. He understood it perfectly. He warned us against this practice of fiat currency and giving too much power and sovereignty to corporate banking institutions. The next method of the financial system is taxation. And taxation is one of the clearest forms of indentured servitude, at least it is to me, than anything else that I've ever looked at. If you're saying to someone, for whatever reason, you must give me this much of what you make, and I will determine how much of that you will give me, I can't understand how anyone can look at that and not understand that that is a form of slavery. You're saying that the product of your labor is not your own. It does not belong to you. It's essentially saying that your physical body that you use to put your labor into effect in the physical world does not belong to you, and it is owned by someone else who can tell you what you will and will not do with your earnings. So this slide should upset a great deal of people, because these 4 months are essentially the months of the year that your average middle-class American works for nothing. All of this money is given to the state. All the money you make on all of these days, January, February, March, and April, are all given to the state through various forms of taxation. Then you're taxed on what you buy as well. But the average citizen, 1/3 of their earnings are given over in taxation. And we actually still think that we are a free people. So manufactured lack is the next example of how we are controlled through the financial system. And third world nations that are controlled by these banking dynasties, they get into these situations not because they don't have the resources to feed and clothe their people. It is because their leaders have gotten into debt contracts with foreign banking institutions, and then when they squander those loans for, they go to countries that they know that they can manipulate their leaders. When those loans are squandered and they really can't pay back the interest or even the principal on those loans, they come in and say, well, we'll forgive some of this debt if you let us use your land for certain things that we want to build and ship out. And they get into shipping, growing cash crops on their land and shipping them out, exporting them to then buy and import goods into their country that really they don't really need from other countries that they could grow on their own land. And they're exporting their main resources that could be used, those resources could be used to feed and clothe their people. And that's how lack and third world debt actually works. There's many documentaries about this that you could check into, but the world has enough resources to feed and clothe every single living being on this planet, many times over. And the idea that these nations could not feed their own people is ludicrous. The reason that this is happening is because they are extremely put under hardship of debt to international banking institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. The other aspect of the financial system that really goes to work on our consciousness is that people come to be seen and to see themselves as human resources, not as individuals, but as a resource to be used as the corporate structure wants to use us. To look at human beings as simply a resource is to devalue their individuality and their uniqueness and have people see themselves as a thing, as something that isn't really actually human, as an object. See, they want us to see ourselves as simply worker drones. You're just a drone that can be replaced at any given time, and someone else can step in and do that task. It was described beautifully in the allegorical movie The Matrix by the character Morpheus, who said that humanity has simply been reduced to one of these, a battery, to power the structure of the Matrix, to power the machine world. And that is what we are when we see ourselves and we allow ourselves to be seen as human resources. Ultimately, the financial system boils down to one word: slavery. It is what is used to really chain us and get us to see ourselves as workers, as a worker race of people, and it's used to actually keep us in servitude, to serve interests that really we don't benefit from. We think we do, but in essence we don't. Things continue to go on as they are, benefiting an elite class, a very small elite class, while millions of people go hungry and starve. And there's no reason for it. The financial system is slavery as long as a differential profit motive monetary system is in existence. Human beings will live under slavery. Until we recognize that there are only people and resources on this planet, and we use our power of will to properly distribute the resources to the people as they need them, and as we wisely use them, and not in destruction of the earth, looking at the earth as something that we own, but something that we are ourselves a part of, and we use and manage these resources efficiently. Until we do that and get away from a profit motive differential source of seeing money, seeing goods, okay, and services, there will be human slavery. And I will go so far as to say that is exactly as it should be. Everything is now exactly as it should be. Based on our level of consciousness, we are getting what we are creating through our consciousness. This isn't something that is happening to us. That's why I say we are in the hidden chamber of the pyramid controlling the shots. It is up to us, what we put into manifestation through our thoughts, emotions, and actions, that determines what happens to us collectively. So if we want to continue to believe in the monetary system and continue to live as if somehow it never has gotten us what we really want. It's always created more suffering and more debt and more enslavement, but we want to believe, we want to stay attached to a belief system that doesn't benefit us, and we want to think we'll continue to do that, and somehow it'll just work out okay. We'll suddenly just get something that we've never gotten as a result of doing this. We're going to continue to be enslaved. And again, it should not be any other way. When we change our consciousness, the shackles will come off. The next method of manipulation that is used upon us by the sorcerers of consciousness is the control of our mass media. The information that we get to hear through mainstream channels on any given day, the mass media, companies like CNN, CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox News, Time, New York Times, The Washington Post, these are all tightly controlled hierarchical systems of scientifically crafted information dispersal that can be summarized under one word: propaganda. These are propaganda corporate entities. They are pumping out a worldview, a vision of seeing the world, a way of seeing the world that the people who own these entities, which are approximately now 5 companies, want us to perceive the world. So these are the disseminators of the mind control through society to get people to think not for themselves, to not get people to learn how to think, but to tell them what to think. And you'll hear all forms of negativity, all forms of violence, of dog-eat-dog world, of man's hatred of other men, of rioting, of natural disasters, any kind of fear-based mentality that they can pump out into the culture through the media. They will do it because it is all about keeping people in fear. Fear. At least that isn't happening to me. I better shut my mouth and go along and just keep my head down and just do what I'm doing. Don't think about things too much. Don't question things too much. Be glad with what you have, that it's as good as it is, because look at what's out there. Keep people in fear. Make them think it's great that I even have what I have now, because they'll never really think about how they're spiritually impoverished, morally impoverished, psychologically, mentally, and emotionally impoverished. You keep pumping the modality of fear into them. And if that isn't working even as good as you like, you have distraction, you have sports, you have celebrity celebrity worship and celebrity gossip. This isn't even news. This is pure distraction. This is dissuasion to get people to look the other way. get them to pay attention to something that's really utterly meaningless, so they're not really seeing what's happening to them. And being people like this in the media, on these conservative talk shows, on these they're really just pumping out a worldview that the state wants people to think. And essentially, all these talking heads really are parrots. They are parroting an official version, an official worldview, an official storyline, the movie, as the researcher David Icke calls it, to get people to see this version and this vision of the world, but never really think about it in their own terms and with their own mind. Just accept what we've told you. We're the repeaters. We got it from our higher-ups, and we're just reading it. We have news readers, yellow journalists, news readers for the state in this country. We don't have a free press. We have a tightly controlled press that are news readers. They're parrots for the official state propaganda. Unfortunately, that's what we have in the mainstream media. This is changing through the alternative media, however, which I'll talk about in part 3. Adolf Hitler understood how important the control of the media was. He said, through clever and constant application of propaganda, people can be made to see paradise as hell, and also the other way around, to consider the most wretched sort of life as paradise. Because that's what the media is there for, to keep people asleep and to keep people afraid in fear consciousness, so that we are a sheep looking up to Big Daddy for protection. That's what it is designed, scientifically designed to do to the consciousness. Food and medicine is a very important method of manipulation. They're in quotes here because they're anything but foods or medicines. They're actually poisons. We're being poisoned at the level of what we take into our body through our foods. Foods are sprayed with pesticides. There are chemical fertilizers in the soils that they're grown. They're genetically modified foods that are causing all kinds of health problems and not giving us the nutrients that we need in our diet. The fast food and sugar and carb-based diet that we see in fast food chains throughout the United States, and through the chemical processed foods that are being pumped into our supermarkets. Factory farming systems too, in which animals go through absolutely incredible amounts of suffering and are treated in horrifically inhumane ways, and then we're consuming that energy. So many different aspects of food. What's coming up with Codex Alimentarius to make nutritional supplements, drugs, and then more tightly control them. Could do a whole presentation in and of itself in what is going on in our food. But the flip side of all the negative things that are taking place with what is being pumped into us through the Western diet is the unnecessary application of medications and surgery. The Western medical view of the world, that the body is simply a machine, is a horribly left-brained approach to holistic wellness, to health. And they want us to see ourselves as needing their solutions for well-being, like drugs, like pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals aren't what create health. Health is created on a number of different levels through how we think, what we put into our body, what we pay attention to, how we react to stressful situations. It is not created by pharmaceuticals. These are treatment of the symptoms, not addressing the root causes of dis-ease. So the medical community simply wants to keep this going by selling us unnecessary drugs and surgery, because that is their product. They are in operation as long as they are selling us drugs and surgery. Most individuals in these jobs don't really, down deep, want to create wellness. They want people, at the highest levels, they want people sick. It's knowingly put into effect. They want people sick because that's how they stay in business. by having sick people. They gauge their success by how many people are ill and that we're treating. That's not a measure of success. Measure of success in any kind of true medicinal field would be how many people are well and don't need to be treated because they're in good health. So HMOs propagate this because they're just about profits, and they're not really out there to help people. They're out there to make as much profit as possible. They're answerable to their shareholders for profit above all else. The medical community goes along with this because they want to stay in operation and have an ever-flowing clientele and sell people unnecessary drugs and surgery. Vaccinations are a part of this, often a deadly cocktail of chemicals. Who knows what are in some of them? Not as much research as needs to be done has been done on a lot of these vaccinations, and you're seeing all kinds of unforeseen side effects through the vaccination of our children. And then this brings me to the often what can be the most harmful substances that one can put into their body, the antidepressant series of drugs, SSRIs, which stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These lock serotonin in the neural pathways between synaptic clefts, and oftentimes, because this serotonin cannot be reuptaken into the brain chemistry, it will start to bond in place in between the neurotransmitter will bond in place in the synapses, and this can cut people off from certain emotions and certain levels of consciousness and certain ways of opening up their mind, expanding their consciousness, and seeing things in a new light. This is a scientifically engineered way of keeping people at a very specific level of consciousness and a very specific level of feeling the emotions that they're experiencing, and often not feeling them at all. Some people report that these substances make you incapable of feeling certain types of emotions, and that's why I would say they're extraordinarily dangerous to be messing with, because and they're absolutely overprescribed as well. But they're dangerous to be taking and messing with, because anything that really permanently affects serotonin levels I would view as a dangerous compound to put into the body. We are meant to feel certain emotions because our emotions are our compass for our moral direction in life. You start to play the numbing out of emotions game, and you're heading on a very slippery path into robot consciousness, let's put it that way. So that's my take on SSRIs. I call them the demon drugs, a class of demonic compounds. Very much against their use and overprescription. The illusion of time is the next method of manipulation that the sorcerers of consciousness use against us. This is kind of a conceptual one. It's a heady one. You have to visualize this aspect. So time is a quality that we often see in physical terms. We say, I don't have enough time. I am spending time. Time flies. See, it's looking at time as a physical quantity based on physical movements of astronomical bodies. So you're quantifying time, and you're saying that it's a physical thing. This goes hand in hand with the idea that time is money. Time is value to us, and we have to acquire it, or we have to look at it in a way that is physical in nature. So this keeps the consciousness very much grounded in the physical world. It's based on physical astronomical objects. It is based on physically endlessly repeating cycles that go over and over and over again and repeat endlessly. So it's a negative worldview way to conceptualize the notion of time. This is a great depiction of what I look at as present moment awareness, or the idea that time is actually an illusion. Because if you can get somebody time identified, they'll not take the time to look into certain events. They're wound up in the events that go on in their life, and it's an endlessly repeating cycle of events over and over and over again. Nobody dissuading from, going off of the usual path of what they do on a daily basis, and they're locked in an endlessly repeating cycle. This is a depiction of the Gnostic crucifixion, where it's a symbol. This is a symbol about time, in effect. If you look at Jesus as the Savior, the light of the world, the one who is the Redeemer of consciousness, okay? Not saying that I necessarily believe in the man Jesus in that realm. We're looking at this as a symbol. He is crucified at Golgotha, a Greek word which means the place of the skull. So the light of the world, the awakened consciousness, the Savior of the world, our consciousness that is born in the prefrontal neocortex of the brain, that the third eye, so to speak, the light, right, is crucified. He's put to death at the place of the skull. This means that the light of the world can be put to death in the mind through psychologically being identified with time. So psychological time is represented by the two thieves that the light of the world is crucified among. This is the thief of the past. He robs from the present moment awareness. What is happening now? What we're experiencing now at this moment. The present moment, the gift moment. This thief is the future. He also robs from the present moment. So if you can keep people's consciousness identified with time, they are always either in regret over the past or in anxiety over the future. They're never really rooted or grounded in the present moment, the gift of consciousness, the light of the world, understanding what's going on within you now and around you at any given time. True present moment awareness. We'll talk about that more in part 3. The last method of manipulation before I get to the big 3 is the denial, hassle, and ridicule factor. So this is threefold. The first one is denial. Again, the ostrich with his head in the sand. Don't look at these things. They're all negative. Why would you bother spending your time analyzing the negativity that's going on? Well, because if you don't understand the problem, you're not going to make an accurate diagnosis. You need to look at the negative so you can make a diagnosis. Dia in Latin means, or in Greek means through, and gnosis means knowledge. A diagnosis happens through knowledge. And if it means looking at the negative, what's the underlying cause of the symptom you're experiencing, you need to do it. You cannot continue to exist in denial that these things are taking place. This is a serious psychological condition known as cognitive dissonance. It's simply seeing with your own eyes the negativity that's going on in the world and yet still saying it isn't that way. No, I deny that it is that way. It isn't how I see it happening before my own eyes, but I still choose to believe that it isn't so. That's cognitive dissonance. That's serious. It's a serious psychological condition of denial. Hassle is the second factor of the DHR factor, denial, hassle, ridicule. I don't want to start speaking out against this stuff because I'm afraid of all the hassle that I'll have to go through by people who don't want to hear this message. It may even be the truth, but I'm not going to bother speaking it because I'll have to go through too much hassle and endure too many unpleasantries. Well, that also won't get you any change. That will also keep you controlled. It will keep you actually enslaved. You will not really make any changes for the better in your life and actually work toward true freedom and true peace, prosperity, or order if you stay in the modality of the hassle-free zone. And the third, of course, is ridicule. I don't want to talk about these things because not many people know about them or understand them, so I'll be seen as the guy in the tinfoil hat, the weird guy who, talks about strange things that people can't really understand or comprehend and don't know about or want to know about, so I'll just shut my mouth and not say anything. And this is another way that we police ourselves. These methods are how the sheep become the sheepdog and police themselves. Denial, hassle, ridicule. We fall prey to these. We're not really working toward true change. We're not really working toward true freedom. So now I'll start to discuss the big three heavy guns of manipulation. And the last part of this part one, part A of the problem, part two, okay, is religion. And the second half of part two, the problem, will pick up with the subversive use of symbolism, and then we'll go into the last and potentially the biggest method of manipulation, chaos sorcery. But we'll look into religion now. And it is one of the big three methods of manipulation, and it is essentially, all religions are essentially one thing in disguise. They're presented to us as essentially different ideologies, and they all do have a core of truth to them that is very well hidden, it's very well concealed. It's there. You have to go through a lot to get to it. But religion in and of itself is technically a disguise for something. And I look at it as a binding, as a magical binding, which we'll see. Thomas Paine, who is one of my personal greatest philosophical influences, one of the people who is really one of the core philosophers of the American Revolution and the principles that founded this country about freedom and about sovereignty. He made this statement regarding religion, which I personally resonate with and have for many, many years. I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish church, by the Roman church, by the Greek church, by the Turkish church, by the Protestant church, nor by any church that I know of. My own mind is my own church. All national institution of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. That is what organized religion is really about. It is a methodology of control, specifically mind control, through fear. Through fear of the unknown, through fear of the unexplained aspects of ourselves, of how we are actually connected to divinity. And we need no priest to experience that. We must become our own priests, our own shamans, if you will, to experience the divine within us. And Thomas Paine's quote there perfectly encapsulates how I feel about religion in general. And moreover, it's because I understand the word religion and what it really means. The word religion is from the Latin religare, and religare means to tie back, to hold back, or to bind fast. It does not mean to reconnect, as many individuals will translate the word religion. If you look up the word religare, which is where the word religion is derived, it means to tie by binding. That is what the word actually means. If you know how to connotatively translate Latin and you know the true etymology of words, religion means binding, or to hold back by tying. And what is it binding? What is binding? Yeah. Here, to prove the point, in a Latin dictionary, I look up the verb religare and it says to tie out of the way, to bind fast, or to moor. I'll be presenting a couple of these, dictionary lookups just to prove the actual etymology of the word, so someone doesn't have to take my word for it. So religion is binding, but what is binding? What is binding in actual magical practice, in occult circles, in occult parlance? What does binding mean? Well, binding is a magical term, and it is descriptive of a class of spells intended to thwart or hold back the progress of an opposing force or practitioner. So that's what binding is, to thwart or hold back, to tie out of the way. That's what religion is, a binding. So what is it trying to bind? If it's binding something, what is it binding? Well, I call this the dartboard of truth. Okay, this is the religious traditions of the world all around the outside. Inside, in the inner circle, you have the mystical traditions, but then there's the core of truth. That's what all religions ultimately share. But it's also what the exoteric aspect of the religion is trying to hold you back from. That's what it's binding. Religion is saying this shell out here is what the truth is. It's saying don't look here and certainly don't look here. Take our word that this is what it is here. So religious traditions are exoteric, meaning on the outside, on the periphery. The esoteric or the mystical traditions come much deeper and closer to the core of truth. They may not be at the bullseye, at the very core or the heart of the truth itself, but they're much closer. They guard the inner sanctum, the holy of holies, the true secrets, the thing that really connects people to truth, that is indwelling. So that's what we want to get to. We want to get to that bullseye. Religions are here to act as a shell to prevent us from getting to that core. And that's what they're binding. Isn't to say that there isn't truth to be found within any of them. But to look, again, it's a box for consciousness. You're looking into any given religion, you're not seeing the whole picture. And the thing that most people do not see when they look into a religion or when they become part of a religion is that all religions share one common thread. They are all essentially astro-theology in disguise. What astro-theology is, it is the placing as gods the planetary bodies and the astronomical bodies that we see in the sky. So it is essentially the worship of the gods in the sky, the planets, the stars, the sun, and the moon. So there are three major groups of astro-theological worship. There is a aspect of astro-theology that is dedicated to the smaller lights in the heavens, the pinpoints of light, so to speak. They're the stars and the planets. Okay, so the small lights of the heavens are the stars and planets, all the little pinpoints of light that we see in the night sky. That's one of the bodies of worship for astro-theology. And the other two are the large lights that we see in the heavens, the sun and the moon. So you have three major groupings, or let's say sects, of astro-theology. You have the worshippers of the sun, the worshippers of the moon, and then the worshippers of the small lights, the stars and planets. I'm going to choose one of them to tell the story of how that particular religion is given to one of these aspects of astronomical bodies. And since it is the religion that I was indoctrinated into when I was young, I'm going to choose Christianity. And I'm going to tell the story of how essentially Christianity is an ancient sun worship religion. So I'm going to use, there are many different cultural myths and cultural religious ideologies that I could have went to discuss the story of the sun, but I'm choosing the Egyptian culture because I think it's probably the clearest example. This is one of the gods of ancient Egypt known as Horus. Horus, Horus. Horus was known as the golden falcon in Egyptian cosmology. He was the sun god, the solar disk that rises in the east and he flies across the sky in an arc. Okay, he flies across the sky in his solar arc. He makes an arc across the sky until he reaches the west at sunset. So Horus is a golden bird. He's a bird that is gold, a falcon, and he makes his trek across the sky daily. The word horizon it means the zone of Horus. Hori, H-O-R-I, is the genitive or the possessive word for Horus. It means Horus's or of Horus. Zone, the horizon, the zone of Horus. That's where Horus appears during the day, on the horizon. The horizon. He makes his trek across the sky, and then he goes into the west at sunset. Okay? So Horus has 3 main family members that you need to understand the role that they play in this story. He has a mother, a father, and a brother. His mother is depicted here, Isis. Isis is the goddess of the night sky in Egyptian cosmology. She is often also identified as the moon goddess. So at night, when the sun is not up, the moon is the queen of the heavens. She rules the night sky. Her cloak is the dark cloak that the stars are embedded in. Okay? So she's the goddess of night, and the moon is her presence when the moon is out and you see it at night. So this dark, feminine moon goddess that also represents the cloak, the black cloak of the night sky with all the stars embedded in it, each day gives birth to the rising sun. She gives birth to God's son, the sun that is owned by the God of the heavens, Osiris, the Father God, the Creator God. Horus is the son of Osiris. He is the Creator God's son. Here you see the solar disk above his head, and the Divine Mother, Isis, gives birth each day to the solar God when the sun is born of the night sky. Horus is depicted right here. He is touching Osiris on his right temple. His dark brother, Set, depicted right here, okay, is touching Osiris in this picture on his left temple. This is the idea of conscience. This is the idea that Horus is the right mind. He is the connection to the right brain. See, he's touching Osiris on his right side of the brain hemisphere. So this is moral action. He's the male principle that's born of the feminine principle of emotions. Right? This is the goddess of emotion. The feminine goddess, the Holy Spirit, our emotions. And our emotions are what give birth to proper moral action. So he is the light of the sky. He's touching the right brain, right? On the left, you have the god of darkness. He's known as Set in the Egyptian pantheon of gods, in Egyptian cosmology. Set is the one who comes at night when the sun is setting. This is where we get the word set, the sun set from. And he conquers the light. He conquers Horus, and darkness prevails. So this is one who is in ignorance, if one is in worship of Set. This is the dark god. It's associated with darkness, ignorance, and the light going out. And look, he's touching the left brain, which tells you if you're too left brain, your actions are not in moral rightness. You're not in the light, you're in the darkness, where the light is put to death. So this is like the concept of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, of conscience. One's whispering in your ear to do the wrong thing, one's whispering in your ear to do the right thing. And Horus was known as, he's a god of uprightness, of righteousness, the savior of the world, the god of light, the solar disk. And Set is the god of darkness that conquers the light. So you see here the Trinity. Osiris is our thoughts. Isis, our emotions. And Horus and Set, our actions. One is born of moral uprightness, and one is a god of darkness and ignorance. It's a beautiful moral symbolic analogy, if we take it as an expression of consciousness symbolically and not as physical gods in the sky. So here we see another statue from ancient Egypt of Osiris, the middle pillar, our thoughts, and then you have Horus, the male principle of action, alongside Isis, the feminine lunar goddess of emotion. Here you have again the yang principle, the yin principle, and the mixture between the two. The coming together of the male and the female. Or thought, emotion, and action coming together as one. So here on the left we see Horus as the child with his mother Isis, and on the right we see the comparable image of Mary with the Madonna with the child of Jesus. Now there's a couple of reasons why they are a virgin goddess, and they give birth to a male child that is not born of a male sexual union with a male. The reason for that is Isis represents the intuitive brain. She represents the midbrain, where conscience and intuition come from. When one conquers the reptile brain and is getting in touch with the right brain of conscience and intuition, one has conquered the father, the controller part of the brain, the oldest part of the brain, the reptile brain, and it is a virgin birth. The feminine limbic brain is giving birth to the neocortex, the divine male child of proper moral action into the world. So it's a virgin birth. We're going to see how even that idea is covered over by astro-theological ideas, and it's just looked at as that's the place where the sun is born in the zodiac, which we'll get into. And look at these images of Mary, depicted as the queen of heaven with her crown on in each example. She is the moon goddess. She wears the dark cloak with the stars embedded in it. The cloak of the night sky with the stars. And in each example, here in this example, you actually see the crescent moon at her feet. She is the lunar goddess. And in each example, she is giving birth to the child of enlightenment, the moral solar principle of proper moral action. Here you see Jesus depicted as laying on hay, which is actually the radiant rays of the sun. Here you see him coming out from beneath the cloak of the heavens, being born, the night sky bearing the solar male child during the day. And here you see from her cloak, here is the sacred heart of Jesus being born in the flames of the sun. So in every example, you're seeing the Queen of Heaven, the night sky, the lunar goddess, giving birth to the child of moral action, the sun. Now, to understand how the story of consciousness, which is Christianity, it actually, there is a real religion of Christianity underneath the astro-theological trappings of it that it is wrapped in to sell as a binding. And that's it. It is the story of how proper moral action is given birth to in the world. It's a virgin birth because the R complex has been conquered. The limbic brain is our intuitive brain that governs our emotions, and we feel those emotions, and so it helps to give birth to the properly balanced neocortex, the savior of the world. So to understand the story as an astro-theological metaphor, we have to understand two basic concepts in astronomy that aren't too complicated. One is what creates the seasons of the year, and the other is what is the precession of the equinoxes. So I'll take the first one, what creates our seasons. Our seasons are created simply because of the tilt of the Earth in relation to the plane that it orbits our sun in. That's all. It has nothing to do. The Earth doesn't vary in great distance from the sun as it makes its journey around it during the year. It is a slightly elliptical orbit, but for our intents and purposes, we can consider it as a circle. So it has nothing to do with distance from the sun. It is simply the tilt of the Earth on its own axis of rotation. That's the only thing that really creates our seasons. So let's look at this. Here the sun is at I'll start at the autumn equinox. The autumn equinox, the sun is directly at the equator of the Earth. Okay, so see that angle that the sun is making with the equator of the Earth? It's right at the equator, right at that point. Okay, so the sun is right at the equator, 0 degree, no angle. If you went to the equator, look straight out, at that day, the sun is right at the equator. It's not in the northern hemisphere, it's not in the southern hemisphere. As the Earth makes its journey around the sun, later in the year, it arrives at the winter solstice. And you see that the tilt of the Earth doesn't change as it goes around this plane of its orbit. Here, it's making a different angle with respect to the sun. So look at where the sun is striking the Earth at. It's striking the Earth in the southern hemisphere. Here's the equator, here's the northern hemisphere, here's the southern hemisphere. So the angle that it's making is toward the southern hemisphere. So the sun started here and now it went down to here. So now, at this point, the winter solstice, the sun is now at a 23.5 degree south angle. The next time of the year is the spring equinox, and the sun has now moved from its southerly position and it's gone back to the equator. So it is back at a 0 degree mark with relationship to the sun. Then we go toward the spring season and to the summer solstice, the beginning of summer. So at this point, we see here's the equator of the Earth, here is the sun, and here's the angle that it's striking the Earth at. And we see that now it's in the northern hemisphere. It's striking the Earth at a 23.5 degree north angle. So now the northern hemisphere is favored by the sun during the season, and that's why it's the beginning of summer for us. When the southern hemisphere is favored by the sun here, that's summer in the southern hemisphere and winter in the northern hemisphere. Okay? So that is what creates the seasons. The tilt of the Earth with respect to its plane of orbit around the sun. And essentially we can look at this a different way. We can just look at it as, here's where the angle with the sun starts. If I am the Earth and the sun is directly out from the equator, this is the autumn equinox. Okay? At the winter solstice, it goes down by 23.5 degrees. Spring equinox, it comes back up. Summer solstice. Autumn equinox, winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice. And this process just keeps repeating like a sine wave as the seasons go on. It's just up and down, up and down. Okay? It's like a pendulum movement. So the next concept in astronomy to understand is the precession of the equinoxes. There is another reference frame of motion at work, which I won't get into the full mechanics of, but you just need to know that the background of stars behind the solar path, the constellations that make up the zodiac. They're in what's called the solar ecliptic path. They slowly go backwards throughout a very long period of time. They slowly precess counterclockwise. Okay, so at the spring equinox, okay, the constellation that the sun is in at the spring equinox over a very long period of time begins to shift, and a new constellation comes in, and it is behind the sun at the spring equinox. And this keeps going until it makes one complete revolution through the zodiac. So the frame of reference of what the Earth is, the pole of the Earth is pointing to, actually makes a full circle in the sky. And it is not because the Earth itself is wobbling on its axis, but I will not get into what really causes that reference frame. But over a long period of time, approximately 25,000 years, a complete circle is made, and at the spring equinox, every constellation has been gone through until you come back to the first one. So that's called the precession of the equinoxes. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to fully understand that right now, just keep it in mind. So this is the story that the ancients told about the sun on the wheel of the zodiac. This is the zodiac. It has all the constellations that the sun goes through during its course of the year. The ancients would quarter this to create the seasons. So they placed a cross over the zodiac wheel, and they looked at it as these three constellations are the spring season. These three are when the sun is in the summer season. These three are the autumn season, and these three are the winter season. Okay. The ancients then placed the sun on the cross of the zodiac, and they would tell its story of its journey through the houses of the zodiac, through the constellations during the course of a year. So I'm going to start where we begin our zodiacal year in Aries at the spring equinox. So the sun here is at 0 degrees. It is at the equator, and it's starting to make its journey up northward into the northern hemisphere. So during these 6 months, the sun's in the northern hemisphere. During these 6 months, the sun is in the southern hemisphere. So here's the point of the 0 point, and it starts rising. Now when it hits Taurus, the bull, the midpoint of the spring season, the sun has become a charging bull. He's gaining strength because he's rising in the northern hemisphere. When he hits this point, this is the summer solstice, the sun has gone as high in relation to its angle of the latitude of Earth as he's going to go. So he's at his highest point in the northern hemisphere, 23.5 degrees north latitude of the Earth. This is known as the Tropic of Cancer. That line, the latitude on the Earth, is called the Tropic of Cancer. And because the sun is entering the house of Cancer, the constellation of Cancer, at that point during the year. This is the summer solstice. It is the longest day of the year as far as light goes, because the tilt of the Earth makes the northern hemisphere of the Earth favored. Now, the sun is entering the summer season, and he's traveling toward Leo the lion. This is the season that the sun is hottest in the northern hemisphere. He has become a roaring lion with a large mane. You know, the solar rays of the sun, the fierce lion. And then the sun makes his journey into Virgo, and that is, after he passes that house, he's at the autumn equinox. Now, he's back at 0 degrees now, and he's getting ready to fall into the southern hemisphere. This is why this season is called fall. The sun is making his descent to another solstice, to its lowest point of power. Okay, so that's the season of fall. Now, this is where the story of Christianity starts to become involved in the telling of the astro-theological story of the sun on the cross of the zodiac. And it is because at this time of the year, when the sun is in Virgo, getting ready to make his journey into the southern hemisphere, into Libra, while the sun is in Virgo, in the constellation of Virgo, when it is rising at the beginning of the day, there is a constellation beneath the house of Virgo, known as Crux. This is what Crux looks like. It's known as the Southern Cross, only visible from the southern hemisphere. So at this time, the ancients would say that the sun was on top of the cross of Crux. Not right on this. The sun doesn't go into this. The sun is here. It's over top of Crux, because Virgo is on top of Crux in the night sky. You just need to look at a celestial map. You pinpoint Virgo, and then you look lower toward the southern hemisphere, and you'll find Crux, the Southern Cross. So at this time of the year, the ancients said that the sun was placed upon the cross of Crux, the Southern Cross. And this marked the time that the sun was getting ready to begin to die, begin to go to his lowest point, the winter solstice. So in this season, the sun then passes through Scorpio, the scorpion, and he is stung by the venom of the scorpion. So now he's really in rapid decline. Okay, he's dying quickly because he's stung by the venom and he's dying, and then he comes to the winter solstice. Now the sun is at 23.5 degrees south latitude of Earth. He is at the Tropic of Capricorn because he's getting ready to enter the house of Capricorn. This is the Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees south latitude of Earth. This is when the sun is at his winter solstice, and the ancients knew that was as far south as the sun would descend. It's making its lowest arc across the southerly sky that it's going to make, and that's the shortest day of the year as far as light goes. It's the day that is the longest day in darkness. So this is when the sun was said to have died upon the cross of the zodiac. He's at his lowest point of power, and he has died upon the cross. So remembering that at the autumn equinox point here is when the sun was placed upon the cross of Crux, the Southern Cross. And this point here at the winter solstice is when the sun dies on the cross of the zodiac. You see here that it passed through 1, 2, 3 zodiac houses to reach that point. This is a symbolic corollary to the story that Jesus hung upon the cross for 3 hours, 3 Horuses hours before he expires upon the cross. So in this instance, from the autumn equinox to the winter solstice, these 3 zodiac constellations are seen symbolically as hours. So at the winter solstice, the sun has reached his lowest point in the southern hemisphere, and at this point the ancients could see with the eye no visible movement of the sun back toward the northern hemisphere for approximately 3 days. So the winter solstice takes place on December 22nd. For 3 days, the sun is seen to be stationary, and its arc is staying at the same position and location in the sky as it rises and sets. It is not until 3 days later that the sun begins to make its trek northward until that is visible to the naked eye. So the ancients would see the sun rising farther northward and its arc getting somewhat larger on the 3rd day after the winter solstice. And that day, of course, is December the 25th, the birth date of the sun, because that is the day visually the sun can be seen to be born from its place of death in the southern hemisphere and to begin to rise again, or start the cycle again of rising and falling during the course of the year. So that is the date when the Son of God is said to be born, and he is born of the Virgin. And we talked about what that really means, the birth of consciousness, the birth of the neocortex from the mammalian brain. However, in this context, astro-theologically, it means that the Son is born of Virgo. So that, at one point, was where the zodiac began. It began at this point, the line between Leo and Virgo. So at that point, the Son would be born of Virgo, the Virgin, not of Aries. So if the Sun, the zodiacal year would begin at this point, it would travel in a circle until it reached Leo and back to the Leo-Virgo line. So if you look at where Virgo is and you count the houses in procession, in the procession of equinoxes, okay, backwards, counterclockwise through the zodiac signs, you get 9 months, and that is the human gestation period. The Son, if he is born of Virgo and carried to term for 9 months until he is born at the winter solstice point. So in that instance, the zodiacal houses are seen to be months symbolically. Here we saw them as hours, and here we see them as months, and we're going to see them as days as well. So here we see a zodiac in stone. This is the Virgo, the Virgin, and Leo, the Lion, the Sphinx. Its position looking east toward the rising sun, and it commemorates the Son being born of the Virgin and the trek of the Sun through the zodiacal houses until it ends up in Leo at the end of the ancient zodiac. So the Sphinx is simply a zodiac in stone. Now, at the winter solstice, the Sun then begins his trek northward again. He goes through Aquarius, the water bringer, because the winter frost is beginning to thaw as we approach the spring equinox again. Okay, so that's the bringer of the waters. And then the Sun comes back full circle to the spring equinox, the 0 point again, when it is back at the 0 point, the equator. And we see that at the point that he died in the southern hemisphere, or in his tomb, after being placed on the cross, he's in his tomb of the southern hemisphere, and after 1, 2, 3 days, he comes back to the 0 point to begin rising again in the northern hemisphere. So this is the rebirth of the Sun. This is the emergence from the tomb of the southern hemisphere to the favored northern hemisphere. And that day is Easter Sunday. And think about the day. East, star, sun, day. All concepts associated with light, the sun, and the sun is a star. It rises in the east. It's up during the day. So Easter Sunday happens at a different date every year. It happens on the first sun day, the day of worship for Christianity, is a solar religion, a solar astro-theological religion. And it occurs the first sun day after the first full moon, because again, the lunar moon goddess must become full to bear the sun, after the spring equinox, or the rising of the sun from the spring equinox, out of the tomb of the southern hemisphere. So Easter Sunday is always celebrated on the first sun day, after the first full moon, after the spring equinox. And this story of the sun savior that has 12 helpers, the 12 constellations of the zodiac, who is the light of the world, the way, the truth, and the life, has performs miracles, rises from the dead after 3 days, has a virgin mother, is the Son of God. Every one of these aspects of this Savior story, the Savior myth that is told over and over again through time. There are over 40 incarnations of this Son God. Every one of the names that you're about to see scroll by is one of the names of this ancient Son Savior figure that comes from the East, has miraculous powers, redeems the world through the light, again has 12 helpers, is the Son of God, has a virgin birth, performs miracles, etc. Every one of those names is that same Savior myth retold, and every one of those names predates Christianity. It predates the first century of the Common Era, often by thousands of years. Some of those names predate the time that Jesus was said to have lived by 2,000 or even close to 3,000 years. Now, this is not to negate the understanding, the underlying moral lesson that Christianity has to teach. There is a core of truth. There is a religion that perhaps an enlightened avatar that walked in the land of Galilee at the first century was attempting to bear into the world and really help to awaken minds of his time. And I don't necessarily try to negate that it may have been a teacher or a group of teachers. However, I think that the idea has been co-opted, and it has been turned into this story of the ancient pagan Son Savior myth in order to conceal the true message of what the virgin birth is, of what the Savior of the world is, and what indeed the ideology that perhaps an enlightened avatar at that time was trying to teach people and help to enlighten them to. And therefore the authorities of the time had to shut down that expansion of knowledge, and they did it by taking it and perverting it and wrapping it in the old sun worship cult, the cult of the unconquerable sun, Sol Invictus. And that's why we see the story of Christianity presented to the masses in the way that it is today. I don't think it negates the true moral lessons that can be gleaned from Christianity, but what we are seeing presented as Christianity and organized religion is certainly not the religion of Christ consciousness, so to speak, of higher levels of awareness, which is what I believe if you look into the true message of Christ, the true teachings that are encapsulated in his words, I don't think that's what modern Christianity is really teaching people. Leonardo da Vinci understood that this is what Christianity was, and he brilliantly codified this in his painting of the Last Supper. If we look at the symbolism that's encoded into this painting, we see that we have a dark half of the room and a light half of the room. Okay? So again, this is the concept of the light and the dark. You can look at this as the male aspect, right? You can look at this as the female aspect, right? So the yang energy, the yin energy. Jesus is the perfect blend of the two. He's the middle. He's the chemical wedding, so to speak. He's the Savior, the light of the world, of higher consciousness. You see that he sits in the region where the light is really coming into the room because he's the sun. He is surrounded by his 12 helpers, or his 12 apostles, the zodiac constellations. You see they're broken into groups of 3, right? So this would be the winter season here. And then as you're rising, this would be the spring season, okay? Here, you're going toward, this would be the autumn season, and of course that would be Virgo, okay? No, Virgo is actually in the summer season, technically. It's above the line. So this is the autumn season. We see that he's surrounded by the 12, his 12 helpers, the 12 signs of the zodiac. We see that they're broken into groups of 3, each group representing one of the seasons. Here in the dark part of the year, you have winter and you have autumn. And then as you're going toward the light part of the year, summer in the northern hemisphere, here you have spring. This group here is spring, and the far group there is summer. Because you see that the part when the sun is darkest, that would be winter, and you're going up toward the summer season there. And Jesus is the equinoxes. He's the perfect balance between the two. So he is the star, or the Son of God, at the gate, the star gate. And see, there's like chaos in the room. They're not in agreement with each other. They're arguing, or there's some conflict. And Jesus has a peaceful countenance on his face because he is the way, the truth, and the life. It's the blending of the male and female to awaken the prefrontal cortex, and that is the way out of the world of conflict, confusion, and it is the way to the light of the world above, the connection with the light of the world above. So Da Vinci encoded this all brilliantly into the Last Supper, and I think he had a real strong grasp of what the real message of Christianity was versus what was being sold to us in Astro-Theology. So here we see the 7 planets, or gods, if you will, that are visible to the earth with the naked eye. You have the sun, you have Mercury, Venus, the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are the 7 gods of the ancient world. These are the planetary bodies that can be seen with the naked eye. One cannot see beyond Saturn without the aid of a telescope. We see that each day of the week is given to one of these 7 gods. So we have the days of the week given in English and French, and then we have the planetary body that they are associated with. Monday is the moon's day. Tuesday in French is Mardi. It's where we get the phrase Mardi Gras from. That's Mars's day. Interestingly, the 9/11/2001 event took place on a Tuesday for the invocation of Mars, the Roman god of war. Wednesday is Mercredi in French. That's Mercury's day. Thursday is Thor's day. In Norse ideology, Thor was Jupiter. Friday in French is Vendredi. That's Venus's day. Saturday and Sunday are relatively self-explanatory. The Jewish religion is Saturnian based. It's the stars and planets, astro-theologically, the religion of the stars and planets, and therefore its day of worship is Saturday, after Saturn, who they considered, since it was the farthest body out from the sun that could be seen with the naked eye, it was considered the ruler of the planets. And then, of course, Sunday is the sun's day. Christianity worships on Sunday, being a solar cult. Our whole notion of time and how we see time is also affixed to the concepts of astro-theology. So we have the 3 astro-theological sects: the sun, the moon, the planets and stars, and we look at our clock being a symbolic zodiac. It has the 12 houses, okay? It has 3 hands. Each one of the 3 hands of an analog clock is given to one of the sects of astro-theology: the solar, the lunar, and the planetary. So we see that the sun is given the hour hand, the most important hand, because it's the hand of Horus, the sun god. The minute hand is named after Min, which is an ancient name for the moon. Min was the moon in Phoenician, and the minute hand is dedicated to the moon on the clock. And the second hand is the fastest hand that travels around the clock more than any of the other hands, because it is given to Mercury. It's the planetary hand, or the pinpoints of light in the sky, the lesser lights, because Mercury is the second body of the solar system after the sun, and it makes its orbit around the sun faster than any other object in the solar system. So this takes us to the concept, the last concept in religion as astro-theology, that ultimately what we are seeing is the breakdown of consciousness on the earth. And we are seeing the earth as a global brain. This is a very critical concept to understand. It will help people to understand why the events that are playing out in the regions of the world that they are happening the way that they are, and in the locations that they are. So if we look at the earth, if we consider that the earth is a living brain, it is actually one consciousness, one brain. It has two hemispheres. We have a Western hemisphere and an Eastern hemisphere. So if we symbolically correlate this to the concept of the bilaterally symmetrical brain, we can place the structure of the brain on top of the Earth map. So we have a left hemisphere of the brain, and we have a right hemisphere of the brain. So you want to picture that you're actually looking kind of this as the back of the head. So this area is let's say this is the back of the head, okay? And this is the left hemisphere of the brain, that's the right hemisphere of the brain. So you need to envision your head looking this way, okay? Picture your eyes looking that way. This area of the earth is your left brain. This area of the earth is your right brain. And if you understand how religious ideologies are structured on earth, this begins to make a whole lot of sense. Because we have three basic astro-theological sects that each correlate to a major world religion. The solar sect of astro-theology is named after the god Horus, and Horus's name in other Egyptian cosmological studies was his name was Amen-Ra. Amen-Ra is the name that is invoked when Christians pray a prayer and then they say the word Amen after the prayer is said, to invoke the sun god of Amen-Ra. What he really represented was the sun at his zenith, at his highest point in the sky. Amen-Ra represented. So it is the sun not at each horizon, at the rising horizon. He could be called Horus, the golden falcon. At the setting horizon, he is Set. But at the zenith, his highest point in his arc across the sky, he was known as Amen-Ra. And often this was just shortened to Ra or Ray, where we get the word rays of the sun from. So it's another name for the sun god Horus. And we have seen that this is the religion of Christianity, and its symbol is the sun on the cross. There you have the sun behind the cross right there. And I'm going to place the blade as this Western left hemispherical religion, the male religion. So the symbol I'm placing on the sun here is the blade, the upward pointing triangle representing yang energy, male energy. The moon cult or sect of astro-theology is named after the moon goddess Isis, depicted here. So this is Isis. The moon religion is the predominant religion of the Eastern Hemisphere, and it is Islam. Islam's main symbol is the crescent moon. And we see, just as Christianity is the predominant religion of the Western left left brain of the earth, the left hemisphere, and it's a male principle. The religion of Islam means surrender. The word Islam means surrender to God, because it is the religion of the predominant religion of the right brain hemisphere, which is passive or surrendering. So ISIS correlates to the right hemisphere of the earth and the right brain hemisphere of the human brain. And on the moon, I'm going to place the inverted triangle known as the chalice. Now, there's another world religion, and it is based upon the sect of Astro-Theology of the stars and planets. So the creator god Osiris is looked at as the god of all the stars, because he's the god of all the suns. He created the heavens. And in Phoenicia, Cana, he was the ruler of the planet Saturn. Saturn is the planet that is farthest from the sun that can still be seen with the naked eye. So his orbit is seen to encompass all other planets. As such, he's the ruler of the planets that revolve around the sun, that have orbits around the sun. And in Semitic religions, ancient Semitic religions, this god was known as El. It's where it means God, the word El. In Judaism, which is what Judaism is actually this aspect of Astro-Theology. Its religion, its symbol is the star. Okay, the stars, because it is the religion of the stars and the planets, the pinpoints of light, as we talked about, the small lights in the heavens. So the name of God in Judaism is Elohim, and it's plural. The reason it's plural is because there isn't one God. There's many gods. Elohim means the stars and planets. That's the big mystery about why El is pluralized in the Bible, because the real astro-theological basis of Judaism is the stars and the planets, plural, the many lights of the heavens. So that's where Elohim is actually derived. And of course, just like their symbol being the star, it's the combination of the male and the female symbols into one. Now, the reason that there is a twofold aspect to the middle part, the middle pillar of the earth, is because in the middle, if we're looking at the brain from the back side of the brain, okay, so your head is actually facing this way, and you're imagining this side as your left brain hemisphere, this side as your right brain hemisphere. What do we see playing out in the world today? We see the left-brained Christian nations of the Western Hemisphere waging war against the right-brained Islamic surrendering nations, or the ideology of the surrender to God as being their religion, the basis of their religion. We're waging war over here in the Eastern Hemisphere, in this region, okay? So it's like the left brain is over attacking the right brain. And the Middle East, the Middle Eastern region is where all of this conflict is centered. And the reason that it's centered on that part of the earth is because this region of the earth is the back of the brain of the earth. It is the cerebellum of the earth. The opposite side of the earth is where the Pacific Ocean is at. So that's where the energies are truly united, on the opposite side of the earth, the peaceful ocean. Pacific, peaceful. It's the prefrontal neocortex of the earth, the third eye of the planet, so to speak. And right on the other side of the globe from this point, you would see in the middle of the Pacific Ocean the Hawaiian Islands, with the largest volcano on the earth, Mauna Kea volcano on the big island of Hawaii. It is the physical representation of the third eye of the planetary brain. All the conflict is happening on the other side, the back of the head of the earth, the cerebellum of earth, which is the Middle Eastern region. Middle Earth, around the Mediterranean region. So this is a proof of the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. As the individual units of consciousness upon the planet become imbalanced toward one polarity or the other, you will see the reflection happen on a grand scale on the entire planet. The Earth is in a state of left brain imbalance because we are in a state of left brain imbalance. And we are seeing all the conflict driven by the R complex of the Earth, which is the Middle Eastern region, which correlates, it maps symbolically to the cerebellum of the Earth. If another country happened to be there at that location, that's where you would see the turmoil and conflict happen. It is a reflection of the Hermetic principle. As the individual goes, as all the collective individuals go on the planet, as their consciousness goes, so the mass consciousness will go, and you will see it reflected on a grand scale. So as we see these three religions put together of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, when we put them all together, we get Isis, which is Islam, the lunar religion, Ra or Horus, the solar religion of Christianity, and El, the religion of Judaism. We get Isis plus Ra plus El, and that spells the word Israel. Now, this is important to understand because you have to understand that this region of the world is where these astro-theological sects actually consolidated the knowledge of the mystery traditions and then began to disseminate their knowledge and culture into other regions of the world. So it is simply an understanding that that knowledge was concentrated in that region of the world before it then began to go out and populate other areas of the world with that information. And this is one of the main reasons why the country of Israel, the government of Israel, has so much influence with many other nations more populated than it and seemingly wielding more political power, but there is such a concentration of the ability to lobby these other nations, such as the United States and Great Britain, with the desires of the government of Israel, because the power of these astro-theological sects is still highly concentrated in the region that we now call Israel, which was formerly Phoenicia, Cana, and the knowledge of the mystery traditions actually came into that region through Egypt and Babylon and the mystery tradition centers that were around what we now call the State of Israel. So that explains why Israel is so influential in what is taking place in the Middle East region of the world, and it explains why the ties with larger, more populous nations are in place. It is in no way any kind of a commentary on the nationality or the religion of the people of that region. It is simply a commentary on the government of Israel and why it wields the amount of influence that it does. So that is religion as binding. The next method of manipulation, the next big gun of manipulation that I'm going to talk about is the subversive use of symbolism, the mentally subversive use of symbolism, particularly in Western culture and particularly through advertising. So, symbolism is everywhere. It is omnipresent. It is all around us. It is in just about everything we see in our daily dealings in the physical world. It's stamped on just about everything. And it's a language. Symbolism is a language. A symbol is neither positive nor negative, just like knowledge, just like occultic knowledge. A symbol is simply something that has the ability to influence consciousness, because symbols are a language that we read through the subconscious mind largely. And we often can get a message through symbol immediately through symbolic language. We get the message immediately, even if we do not really understand the symbol at a conscious level, because it is not really speaking to the conscious mind unless you know the language of symbolism. And unfortunately, many people do not. They are illiterate when it comes to reading symbolic language, and therefore they're really at its mercy. They're really at the mercy of how an advertiser or a product peddler wants to reach your subconscious mind. If you're not aware of how they're using symbols to reach the subconscious regions of the mind and the subconscious awareness. So we have to become symbol literate if we're going to be able to use symbols ourselves, if we're going to be able to protect ourselves against unwanted influence and usage of symbols. What I'm going to do is present a symbol, describe how it is being used, for what purpose, and then I'm going to give examples of how the symbol is used in logos. So the first symbol is that of the sun, which we already talked about the significance. The sun is a symbol of light, of life, of knowledge and information. It's a symbol of moral uprightness, okay, of morality. Most of all, it is a symbol of knowledge, of awareness, of enlightenment, of having knowledge and being able to use it to do the correct things that will lead to awareness and will lead to order in life, will lead to prosperity in life. That's what the sun has traditionally been a symbol of, however, wherever it has been used in iconography. And we see this employed by companies that want you to trust them, want you to identify with their products as something that is used for life, that is used for lifeblood, so to speak, that is used to represent enlightenment even. So here we see it used in oil logos, in gasoline companies. So you see it here, Sun Oil Company, Gulf, with a large orange disc representing the sun behind it. The sunflower of British Petroleum, and Dutch Royal Shell gasoline, which is a symbol of the sun coming up over the horizon with the rays. Even though it's encased in the outer shell, it still is clearly an image of a rising sun with the rays of light coming up over the horizon. We see it in technology, we see it in media, we see it in food companies. One of my favorites is ShopRite. You see the shopping cart with the sun behind it, indicating that if you shop there, you can purchase light. It's a subconscious play on the symbol. So they're trying to sell enlightenment as part of the product. You know, something that you lack, something that they are aware that you want spiritually, is being sold to you by proxy. And a rite is a ritual, the ritual of shopping. Shop right, and there is the sun in the basket. It's a very good example. In financial institutions, the sun is ever present because, again, it is a symbol of trust. It is a symbol of sovereignty. It is a symbol of knowledge and enlightenment. On the Discover charge card, Sun Trust Mortgage Corporation. Here's Citibank, the cross of the zodiac and the sun coming up over the horizon. Lucius Trust, Lucius meaning light. Sovereign Bank, sovereignty being sold to you through your banking institution. This circle with the dot with the circle around it, an ancient symbol of the sun, and in the shopping giant Target. Of course, Barack Obama's logo, the rising sun. Many people just look at this as an O with the American stripes, but it is the sun coming up over the horizon, because he is being sold to us as the new savior that will save us from all the evils of the former administration. He is the new reincarnated sun savior. So the zodiac is the next symbol that is used, and these symbols have to do with zodiacal houses and astro-theology in general. We see it on secret society logos, such as the Order of Demolay, the cross of the zodiac. You have the cross of the solar system, the equinoxes and the solstices, and then you have the galactic cross, the great cross there, the double cross. Here you have the Knights of Malta's logo, the cross of the zodiac, the equal armed cross. On the CIA, the Central Intelligence, the cross with the sun. And BMW's logo, an equal armed cross, quartered like the zodiac wheel. You have the moon iconography used in Starbucks logo. You see the crescent moon, and she has the star. She's crowned as queen of the heavens. So again, it's the goddess being used there. The horns of Aries, often used in different corporate logos. You see the ring of Saturn used over and over again. Here's more rings of Saturn. Mercury, the planet used there. Specifically Pisces, the two fish. See examples of how this iconography is used. Here we see the sacred geometry of the Vesica Pisces used in MasterCard's logo, the unification of male and female into the womb of creation, the one womb. And this symbol being the female sex organ, the channel for men, the Vesica Pisces, male and female uniting. Again, on Krull's logo, we see it used as the depiction of Jesus, the fish, because the sun is now currently in the house of Pisces, the fish. And of course, the Pope, the vicar of the sun god incarnate upon earth, he wears the mitre, which is the fish with its mouth open. And here you see the astro-theological cross, the equal armed cross of the sun on his forehead. Here you see it again on his sash. And he carries the image of the cross with the sun god upon it. The inverted pentagram. So the pentagram is used as a symbol of the four elements and then a fifth element. The four elements being earth, air, water, and fire, the material world. But more specifically, what those elements represent is earth is our resources. It is what we have to work with, the things that we can put into use for ourselves in the world and how we use them. And it is our makeup, our genetic makeup, our natural abilities. That's what earth represents. Air represents our intellectual makeup, the powers of the mind, the powers of air, our intellect. Water is our emotional makeup, how we use our emotions to change consciousness in the world. And then fire is our actions, the male principle, what we do with what we have. So those are the four elements, but then they all must be governed by the fifth element, and the fifth element is ether or spirit. It is the actual pure essence of consciousness, the essence of who and what we really are, that we must connect to unite the other elements. So it is love, it is higher consciousness, it is spirit. And in its correct upright form, you have the four elements at the bottom and then the point facing up to represent spirit. The inverted pentagram is the symbol of the opposite of that. It is the material realm, the earth, air, water, and fire, the elements ruling over spirit, the fifth element, which is why an inverted pentagram is a negative connotation of this symbol. It's a reversal of a powerful, positive, connotative symbol, the upright pentagram. But the inverted pentagram means that the spirit is being thrust downward and is being ruled by the material realm. And here we see it in the Order of the Eastern Star. Here we see it in the Victoria Police logo. Here we see it in the official emblem of the Church of Satan. And here we see an upright pentagram for the Fraternal Order of Police, but I'm going to refute that symbol as actually being upright, and I'm going to tell you that its real orientation, if you study the iconography inside of that circle there, you will not orient that temple as it is in all Masonic tradition unless you flip that pentagram over, and then you're seeing it for what it really is being used for, particularly in its usage with the Fraternal Order of Police. The blood drop is another symbol that is used, not as widespread as some of the others, but as certainly in as powerful of a way. And this again represents life force energy, the blood drop. It is our life blood. So we see this in often oil companies and financial institutions. Commerce Bank, Luke Oil, oil, money, these are your lifeblood. Pemex oil from Mexico, Getty, here's the combination of the blood drop with the solar disk. The triangle and all-seeing eye, or pyramid and all-seeing eye. So this is a symbol of intelligence. This is a symbol of higher consciousness. This is the symbol of awareness. And here's how it is being used. AOL's logo, the CBS eye. There's a symbolic speech synthesis in there, CBS. That's what you will be seeing if you watch CBS. You will see BS. Fidelity Investments. You see the pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the top, crowned in light. Knowledge at higher levels, darkness below, in ignorance. Those below, the highest levels. Arco, here's the symbol of a pyramid with the capstone missing as seen from above. Here we see in Masonic iconography, the all-seeing eye above the compasses and the square. Here we see it on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States, which is on the back of the dollar bill, which I'll be explaining in detail. The Information Awareness Office, and of course British Intelligence, MI5's logo. The pyramid, the cap missing, and the eye in the middle of it. The owl is a powerful symbol of the elite. The owl is, I guess you could say, the mascot of the sorcerers. It is the animal most identified with consciousness that is aware, yet is using that knowledge to suppress those who are not in the know. And we see it most widely used in the Bohemian Club. This is an organization of elite occultists that meet once a year in the Redwood Grove, about 70 miles north of San Francisco. And they have rituals in this grove that are actually derived from ancient Babylonian ceremonies. And they have a stone owl there that represents an Ammonite god that was, children were often sacrificed and immolated to this god. This god's name was Molech, or Moloch, and it was often depicted as a bull god. The owl kind of has been used to as a symbolic representation of this bull, because the bull has the two horns like a horned owl does. And it can be seen as either a bull or an owl. In the Babylonian tradition, it was more frequently represented as a bull, but it was also seen as an owl because it represents the immolation of a specific aspect of consciousness, and that is the feminine aspect of consciousness. So what the ritual entails, if you really understand its deep symbolic significance, which many do not, and they will say, oh, it's just a harmless ritual by men who are acting out psychodrama. It's nothing of the kind. It's an extremely subversive ritual against the feminine aspect of consciousness. And here's how it works. They have this owl that they're going to have a ritual before, and they take an effigy of a child and they float it upon the water. You see here the dark aspect of the Hermetic principle being conveyed here, the as above, so below aspect in the reflecting pool. As above, so below. And they float this effigy of an infant out into the water where they set it ablaze, and they immolate it to this owl. What this represents is the immolation of the inner child. That's what the elite are actually doing in this ceremony. They're telling people subconsciously to annihilate your emotion, annihilate your care for what you are doing in the world. So the ritual itself, the name of the ritual carries its meaning. The ritual is called the cremation of care. That is exactly what those who are participating in this are doing. They are immolating the inner sacred feminine child of consciousness. Care is what's being burned. So they're saying that dull care is the enemy. Your care for what you do to others is the enemy. It needs to be eradicated so you can use your power of will to do anything that you want to do, regardless of the consequences that it means for other people. If you immolate your emotion, you will be more able to do that effectively without emotions getting in the way. And that's why they burn the effigy of that infant. Anybody that says that that is not what the ritual is about does not understand the deep symbolic connotations of that ritual and the derivation of where that ritual came from. And it does indeed come from ancient Babylonian rites, specifically the rites of the Ammonites, which were a dark, basically a satanic cult, the worshippers of the gods of chaos. Molech being one of them, the devourer of the sacred child, the feminine care principle. That is the owl. We see it encoded very covertly because the owl is a predatory bird that can see its prey at night from a higher perspective when its prey cannot see it. So it is easy to remain hidden and then attack when it wishes to pounce upon its prey. And its prey is in the dark. So it's in the know, its prey is in the dark. A perfect symbol for a sorcerer wishing to yield occult knowledge against those who are in ignorance. We see it very covertly displayed on the shield on the upper right-hand side on the front of the $1 bill up in the corner. Clearly, though, when blown up, you can see that it is indeed a small owl peeking out from the corner. It is encoded in architecture. This is Commerce Square. Commerce Square. The financial system and the square, the symbol of base consciousness combined. And the two owls, the double owl. If you look at these in another different aspect, you'll see that there are actually wings down at their sides as well. This is on 21st and Market Street in Philadelphia. And this is the Frost Bank building in Austin, Texas. Clearly from the corner angle an owl. It looks even more convincingly as an owl when it is illuminated at night. and it is even more appropriate, and that brings us to the torch of illumination.